children of slaves who were brought here unlawfully, in defiance of laws forbidding the slave trade.
Y'all gotta watch this Amy Coney Barrett woman. She tricky. Y'all Pan-Africans, the ones that really need to be watching her with these questions she asks. Me personally, I don't understand why she bringing up the Atlantic slave trade, right? Because due to Udi Posse David juries, right, the Atlantic slave trade would not be in the borderlines of United States of America. We are discussing violations that's happening within the borderlines of the United States of America, which is domestic. When they start talking about stuff outside of the borders of the United States of America, dealing with Black Americans or anything, then we talking human rights. See, we're not talking human rights right now. It's steps to this. In order to talk human rights, we got to be our own nation of people already, right? And what's some of the first steps of being our own nation? Self-preservation, right? Um, Demarcation, right? Got to define who we are. Stop letting everybody tell our story, right? Arise from the ashes like the phoenix. But when we become our own nation, then we can build a crime bill against whoever that did us dirty, right? We could build a crime bill against Ghana, since they trying to come for our reparations, act like they trying to help us out, right? Build a crime bill against United States and wherever your ancestors, state your ancestors come from. If it's Mississippi, against Mississippi, whatever county is in, if it's in a certain county, against that county.
Would in fact be citizens. And
Yes.
we can imagine that their parents were not only brought here in violation of United States law, but were here against their will, and so maybe felt allegiance to the countries where they were from. And you say that the purpose of the 14th Amendment was to put all slaves on equal footing, newly freed slaves on equal footing, and so they would be citizens. But that's not textual. So how do you get there? You say it in just a few sentences, so can you elaborate?
Sure. If you look at I think if you look at the 19th century sources, what you see is that even though their entry may have been unlawful, 19th century antebellum law never treated their presence as unlawful. In fact, quite the opposite. One of the amici, in fact, points to like a Mississippi statute, which probably is replicated throughout the South before the Civil War, that says slaves in Mississippi have an indefeasible domicile in Mississippi. In other words, even if they run away, if they get away, Mississippi says, nope, you still live here. Right? And so it would be astonishing, in other words, for the opponents of the 14th Amendment to say, oh, these people were not domiciled and therefore it goes the other way, because actually U.S. law, even if they were brought in illegally and through an illegal slave trade, once they were there by
their intent is to return as soon as they can, let's say. So they're here, they're resident, and maybe under your theory, which says, well, lawfulness for a different purpose, but they're here, they're resident, let's take your assumption that they're not here unlawfully. But let's say they don't have an intent to stay. They want to escape and go back the second they can. Are they domiciled?
The reason why I tell y'all Pan-African to be careful about this Amy Coney Barrett, right? Because y'all act like y'all love Africa so much that y'all want to go back, right? Why y'all ain't been left? You know what I'm saying? Y'all trying to convince other people to come over there with y'all. No, take your lead by example. Like the mother Pan-African goofies win. Get their money took. Get extorted. Huh? And another thing, y'all do know the term slave is a reclassification as well. Social and political, right? The same as a subject or a citizen. That's another way to take somebody else's milk and cookies. More people coming in to outnumber you, then claim jurisdiction over you and put you under their capitulations.
Under the 19th century law, I think this is the flip side of the hypothetical that we were talking about earlier. Under 19th century law, they are treated as domiciled in the United States, so it would be astonishing. And the debates in the congressional floor talk about not this specific case, but to say, look, slaves who have been forced to come here and have been here are lawfully domiciled here. I mean, they don't use the ways domiciled, but like they use allegiance. They say they don't have allegiance to, once they've been forced to come here, they don't have allegiance to any foreign or African potentate, and therefore
But General, that goes
How
to
would
the
that
point.
apply to the children of illegally trafficked people today? Would the same reasoning apply?
it would turn on whether the parents are lawfully domiciled in the United States.
So if they're brought in illegally, but then they choose to remain and they want to remain and they're domiciled, you would say that their lawful presence is not dictated by whether they were brought here lawfully or not. And that's different from someone who, say, crosses the border unlawfully.
Yeah, I think it would turn on whether their presence is lawful.
General.
I'm not gonna lie though, Amy Barrett argument is kind of clever when I think about it. But I still don't like it because she's comparing black Americans to illegal modern day immigrants, which is an anachronism. Anachronism means backwards time. So just like the term African American is not only just a misnomer or a non-negere, right? It's an anachronism because they're trying to backdate it in time, in a time period that it didn't exist. Anytime someone bring up an invention that a Negro or a freedman created, oh, African American invention, you just backdated that term into, let's say, 1960, 1920, whatever, however far the, in this case, they backdating it to 1868. But she's not only backdating our term, what we are identified as in today's time, right? She's backdating immigrants to that time period. And that's why I feel like it's very disingenuous and it's inappropriate. And not only that, our country had two different agendas from then to now. Back then, it was give nothing and get everything for free. Now, it's give a little to get a lot. And the only people that's really taking a little are the people from third world countries, the immigrants, the buffer class, people who don't mind getting exploited with no dignity nor integrity.
In other words, obviously there may be many other important things that could be done to assist people like that. The question is, if they give birth to someone in the United States, that person naturally a citizen, that would turn, based on the original public meaning of the clause, on the lawfulness of their presence. Are they domiciled?
General.
This woman talking points are making me think about removal acts in the 1830s, right? Because she steady talking about what if they don't want to come back to the land or they want to go and they don't want to be domiciled and this and that. Its chief principles is all about getting property from heirs that don't claim the land, and then they are from heirs that don't know that they're heir from of that land. You see what I'm saying? You're gonna hear her talk about you sanguineous and all this stuff later, which deals directly with heir, or earl, and everything like the Squatters Act, land grabbing acts, and stuff like that came in between that during the Reconstruction era. And we know what followed that is what Martin Luther King said. They was giving over 160 acres of land to peasants for economical flooring, which is the Homestead Act that came after.